Okay, testing. Microphone is working well. Last few people coming in. All right. Finish up that sentence. Excellent. All right, so we're going to make a start. Sunny, move to your seat quickly, please. All right, good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the final session of the Australasian Aid Conference for 2025. My name is Nicola Nixon. I'm the Senior Regional Director for Governance with the Asia Foundation, based in Hanoi, and I'm also the Acting Country Representative for Vietnam. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. So thank you for joining us for what I hope will be a very energising conversation on the politics of backlash and the possibilities of transformation in Asia and the Pacific. Now, a little bit of framing. So across this region, we're seeing both progress and pushback on gender equality. Over the past 20 years, we've seen many areas in which women have claimed new spaces in politics, business, community leadership and more. And yet we can also see that many of those gains are under strain. More women than men are stuck in informal, insecure jobs. Care work, and a lot of discussion on the care economy, care work remains invisible, generally speaking, and undervalued. Online spaces amplify misogyny faster than truth. And across many societies, new forms of conservatism, often cloaked in the language of faith, family or culture, are rolling back rights that once felt quite secure. Now, these patterns and trends are not inevitable. They are political. They are the outcome of choices, incentives, and systems that can also be changed. What's distinctive in some ways about Asia and the Pacific is the backlash that we're seeing globally often is more specifically directed to gender. Gender becomes a kind of proxy battlefield for wider struggles over identity, modernity, and the moral order. And in moments of rapid social change or political instability, controlling women's roles offers a way for political and religious actors to reassert authority and claim guardianship of tradition. And amidst instability, globally, this becomes even more troubling. And yet, amidst this backlash, we see resilience take new forms. Women leading social movements and local governance. Men questioning inherited norms of dominance and gender roles, and communities translating the idea of equality into their own social and cultural terms. Now, this is the terrain that we want to explore today. And our conversation will explore three intertwined questions. First, what does this backlash look like? It may be global, it may be in many ways universal, particularly when it comes to gender and gender equality, but it's experienced and manifests itself very specifically in specific contexts. Secondly, what is the politics of backlash in the region? Who resources it? Who benefits from it? It gives us a stronger sense of the why. Why are we seeing this happen? And third, how are women's leadership and activism navigating this backlash in different contexts in the region? What's being learned in the process, and what might we see amidst all of this that has the potential for transformative change? So we're super lucky to have three amazing leaders here today with us who bring deep insights from different vantage points. On the far left, or my left, your right, we have Susanne Legena, CEO of Plan International Australia. Susanne joined Plan International Australia's executive team in 2011 and was appointed Chief Executive Officer in 2017. Yay, apparently. Woohoo. We'll have one of those for each of our speakers, please. Next to Susanne, we have Michelle Reddy. Michelle is one of the founders of the Pacific Feminist Fund and is currently serving as the Partnership and Resource Mobilisation co-lead. And to my left, yes, absolutely, yes. Okay, the next one has to get louder with a little bit of, yeah. Okay, our third speaker, get ready. Is Ibu Tri Hastuti Nur, and Ibu Tri is a lecturer in communication studies at Muhammadiyah University in Yogyakarta in Indonesia, and she's also the secretary of the National Board of Aisyiyah, the largest Muslim women's organisation in Indonesia. This panel's going so well so far. Okay, so just to bring the mood down slightly. All right, so in this first round of questions, I'm going to ask each of you in turn to briefly describe what backlash against women and girls looks like in the places that you're most focused on and the different forms that it takes. And I'm going to start with you, Ibu Michelle. Ibu Michelle now. So we're all Ibu as well.
Bulavinaka, Mari, everyone. So I come from a really beautiful region called the Pacific region, and usually we are lumped together with Asia. So you would have heard Asia Pacific, and that really riles me up because they're two different regions. And so the Pacific region also has one of the largest bodies of waters, the Pacific Ocean. It's also the region, you know this by now, that has contributed the least, but will face the most impacts of climate crisis. It's also a region where a majority of nuclear weapons tests have occurred. It's been a nuclear playground for the US, UK, and France. And even to this day, its impacts are still being felt, generation after generation. The Pacific Ocean and its people have always had the experience of, or have been used as a dumping ground. It's also a region that has the highest rates of violence against women, girls, and gender non-conforming people. It also has one of the lowest rates of women's leadership and political decision-making or representation. It's also a region that's hugely dependent on foreign aid. And because of that, the rise of conservative governments across the world and even in the Pacific region means that the priorities of governments or conservative governments does have an influence in the way that the Pacific countries have their domestic and international policies. And I think that that's really important to note because whilst the Pacific has a lot of amazing resources, it has been influenced over time and will continue to be influenced by the rise of conservative governments. And those conservative governments are also backed by a really well-funded, well-organized, well-strategized anti-rights movement. I mean, the amount of funding, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, is that whilst there's very little money that's going to gender equality, but the amount of money that the anti-rights movement is really putting towards narrative building, shifting behaviors and norms, convincing young people to join the bandwagon is quite high. And that is also slowly creeping into the Pacific region. We know that the US cuts, and from the partners that we have worked with, is that the US aid cuts have not only had an impact on civil society and women's rights organizations, but it's also had an impact on Pacific governments, where the resources that they were dependent on is now taken away. So you have a lot of Pacific governments, civil society, and feminist movements really being impacted by rise in authoritarian governments globally whose policies or decisions have an impact in the Pacific.
Thanks very much, Michelle, and some powerful points there around the conservatism of governments themselves, the lack of women's leadership, and this issue that we will dig into quite a bit more a bit later is also around resources and resources for women's movements. We'll now turn to Ibu Tri, who's going to give us some background about the situation in Indonesia with the help of her PowerPoint. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Bu Nicola. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. First, I want to talk about the Aisyiyah, my organization. First, actually, Aisyiyah established since 1917. Yeah, the oldest organization before Indonesia established. Yeah, and today the Aisyiyah wing organization of Muhammadiyah already 108 years old. Yeah, and since established, Aisyiyah and Muhammadiyah always support our government. Yeah, to independence, and now in many issues, in education, in health, and social welfare, in environment, and yeah, many issues, Aisyiyah and Muhammadiyah always support our government. And if we discuss about the backlash and the gender, I will to give the context first about what the achievement of women movement in Indonesia in Reformation era. Actually, women movement in Indonesia have many achievements in the Reformation era. First, about the establishment of National Commission on Violence Against Women of Komnas Perempuan. I think this is the good achievement in Indonesia, and presidential instruction concerning about the gender mainstreaming, enactment of law about the elimination of domestic violence, enactment of law about the crime of human trafficking, child protection, and of course affirmative action regarding the women representation in parliament, and judicial review of the concerning the age of the marriage from 16 to be 19, and the last enactment of law about the crime of sexual violence. This is the achievement of a women movement. But when we discuss about the backlash in the gender movement or women movement, I thought that anti-feminism movement, I will to show with my presentation here. Okay, sorry. Here, okay. I have two points. First about the anti-feminist movement, and the second about the hijrah movement. Okay, about the anti-feminist movement, is it one form of the feminist backlash, and the app of law feminist of anti-feminist movement in Indonesia continue of today. I think the passage of the law, elimination domestic violence or of law against sexual violence is victory for the women movement in Indonesia. In passing domestic violence is not personal matter, but human right issues. But However, passage of the pornography law was seen as a victory for the conservative women movement to control women body and sexuality. This is the example about the anti-feminist movement. I want to show you. This is, for example, in the some of film in Indonesia still, for example, film Selesai. This is this one sample that women must maintain a family harmony, even they got violence in the domestic violence. And this is in the advertisement in Indonesia, I think a consistent portrait about the woman and the primary actor in the domestic work. Still today. Okay, and then this is massive in the digital era now. In the digital era, I think many discourse about the how the female back to the domestic roles, yeah, and this is the some simple. For example, TikTok, yeah, because TikTok is very popular in Indonesia, yes, and female preacher state that women who earn a living will become arbitrary and disrespectful toward their husband, and many followers and hearers. And the others, the next, yes, and this is the from TikTok too, yeah, about how the scenes of a wife disobeying of their husband, and the preacher asserted, man preacher, yeah, woman true role is a housewife, and that women should not be shown by liberal feminist ideology. Yeah, this is just some example for what is the discourse in Indonesia, and that's and now in the cases when the rate of women propose to divorce, many I think many cases in Indonesia that women propose to divorce increasing, and the community and local leader blame that because women more independence, yeah, so in independent and economic. They didn't need a man, they didn't their husband dignity more, and the condition I think broke the patriarchal system in Indonesia. This is some example about the how the backlash politic in Indonesia in the gender movement. And the second about the hijrah, yeah, I think this is the phenomena of hijrah. I want to say that the term of hijrah is used to describe a movement that encourages Muslims, especially young people, to migrate to become better individual by increasing their adherent religious law. But the transformation is hijrah just adoption of Arab style clothing, yeah, with headscarf and flowing robe, and the biggest, not like me, I'm not hijrah, yeah, yeah, because my scarf and my clothes to be, I mean, very not like hijrah, and the hijrah identified with the significant changes with their dress code, from restrictive to more Islamic compliant clothing with long and wide scarf and covering and loose-fitting clothing. So I think this is the phenomena in Indonesia about the backlash politic in gender movement or women movement. First about the anti-feminist movement, and the second about the hijrah style. Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much, Ibu. And I'm sure a lot of those pictures resonate with examples from many of the different contexts that everyone's living in. And I think I really appreciate that you sort of reinforced there the connection between the offline and the online worlds, and how these are sort of reinforcing and accelerating this phenomenon. And this sort of in those messages, that sort of intersection between the personal, economic insecurities, and that really careful messaging that intersects with gender messages and also with religion. Susanne, please go ahead.
So I want to talk about the perspective from girls and young women that we worked with in Plan, and they talk about how it manifests in the everyday policing of their choices, including like where they can go, what they can wear, who they can befriend, even how loudly they can raise their voices on issues that matter, whether that's online or offline. For example, in a survey we did last year, 1 in 3 adolescent girls said they felt pressure to self-censor their social media presence due to harassment or fear of family disapproval, heightened by popular anti-feminist online accounts. It's also found in structural rollbacks. You're seeing, especially if you tuned into this, reinterpreting the scope of laws designed to protect girls from early marriage. And you especially see it in efforts to limit the content of school sexual and reproductive health education under the banner of protecting traditional values. Sometimes you'll see it challenged as a gender ideology. These are the kind of tag words you pay attention to, you start to hear. It's frequently justified under appeals to culture or religion, but their immediate impact is to shrink girls' own agency and life choices. And it is economic. We're seeing girls, especially post-pandemic, moving into the informal workforce under conditions that are insecure, unpaid and unprotected, and more girls are, because of their environmental situation, being pulled out of school to marry earlier because of economic pressures. And I think what's also being found in a kind of zero-sum thinking and rising discourse and some investment in boys at the expense of girls. So you'll hear more and more the discussion, what about boys? And it's not that we don't believe in that. Clearly working with men and boys is key to changing norms and behaviours that perpetuate gender equality. But you might have seen in Fiji recently calls for a men's department, and an organisation in Australia that's working on masculinities, whom I really respect, they had in their material last week, when we invest in boys, everyone benefits. And I was like, what? Do they? Anyway, it's a question, but we have evidence of the multiplier effect of investing in girls, but I'm not sure that all kinds of investment in boys will produce the kind of results in society that we want to see. We can see that political actors definitely, especially in these moments of crisis or transition, are actively fostering gendered anxiety. Probably 2 forms of it. One of them is around kind of race and identity that way, and the other one's around gender. And I think we have to be talking here about disinformation and misinformation and the use of massive, the manosphere now travels faster through social platforms than grassroots truth-telling can keep up. It's at a pace and scale that our grassroots work cannot match. And accounts pushing anti-girl, anti-feminist content attract massive following, both to boys and to girls, particularly when led by charismatic figures or influencers whose ties to religious or political groups may not be immediately obvious. They're doing it at scale and on steroids. And the thing that it's doing is having a chilling effect. Young women and girls internalise, and boys actually, are internalising these hostile messages. So we're seeing declines in mental well-being and in willingness to take part in public life or to access crucial information on sexuality and health. There's a direct link between social media hate campaigns and girls withdrawing from youth parliaments, students' associations. And in fact, I was talking to my YWCA partners here somewhere, and they were telling me that girls put forward to participate in leadership conversations, they're being targeted in their home community. So when they return to their home communities, it's a lot of misinformation, disinformation, lies basically spread about maybe what they were doing in the city or when they went to that UN meeting. That actually makes it really dangerous and harmful for them, another chilling effect. And clearly shrinking resources. I mean, 1% of aid flows were flowing to women and girls movements anyway. And we know that as several of our partners have said, as a result of USAID cuts and more conservative governments, the removal of gender equality is an objective. You're seeing demand grow, but the actual amount of flows in money decreasing. UN Women says that half of the women and girl-led movements in the world are at risk of closing in the next 12 months. And girls also report what they describe as a hyper-visible culture of surveillance, about this idea that your phone is always with you, you're always being watched, you can be filmed, not just by your family, but by your schools, the broader community, networks of strangers online. And it's reducing the freedom to experiment, to fail, to lead, and to be free. So I think it's having a really massive chilling effect, and you're seeing this also participate in polarisation between boys and girls in some contexts.
Thanks very much, Susanne. So we've heard some, really concerning depictions of the sorts of situation that women and girls are facing, and we see this in all of the contexts, I think, in which we're working. We're going to turn now to thinking a little bit about the politics of that situation. We've sort of delved a little bit into some of that in terms of the resource flows and where there's significant politics underlying those. But why these patterns keep reoccurring also has to do with who benefits from them and how they're being sustained. Arguably, backlash isn't just about resistance to gender equality, it's often a strategy. I alluded to this at the beginning, that political leaders, religious movements, online influencers use gender as a tool to mobilise emotion, signal authority, and sometimes to consolidate power. So let's unpack that a little bit. If the backlash is not simply resistance to equality but a strategy, who benefits in the context that you're looking at, politically, economically or socially, from keeping gender hierarchies in place? And I'm going to start with you, Ibu.
Yeah, I think in this context, there are alliances between religious leader and political actor in the many level, in the national to the villages level. For example, about the law of pornography, religious leader control the sexuality and woman body, and how women wear the clothes, and in the level, in the province level, for example, in provincial and the district, we have many implementation of Sharia law in several provinces in Indonesia, and I think this is the impact on the economic and the political issue. For example, when they restrict on the women mobility, so women could get access in the public issues and the public participation, and women could go anywhere to, to get the economic opportunity. As like I already mentioned, when the women more independent and got some money, and then actually they have the problem in the family, and they purpose to the divorce for his husband. So this is you broke the because you are Eastern woman, so don't like that. This is the feminist ideology. This is the problem in how the alliances and the religious and the political actor. I think give the to restrict to the women and mobility and the public participant for the women, and will close the access and the economic and the political participation, I think. Yeah.
Thanks, Ibu. Over to you, Susanne.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to, clearly political actors who leverage gender as a tool, those restrictive policies around girls' mobility, education or dress codes send a powerful signal not just about gender but about who holds legitimate power over tradition and morality. And what we're seeing is those politicians present themselves as defenders of a natural or sacred order, rallying conservative constituencies around class or religion under the banner of protecting family or preserving culture. And it has a real cost, both to girls and young women, but to non-binary people, trans women, who pay the price. Their access to education, to public spaces, to self-expression is curtailed, not by accident, but by design. They're not considered an important constituency. No one really cares about them very much. And so they're a group that's easy to marginalise, and it happens in the economic sphere too, as girls are pushed more into the unpaid care roles. And the informal economy then is quietly subsidised by their labour, and at the macro level, economies are losing out on that full potential of what that young population of people could contribute. And I just wanted to just draw attention, a lot has been said about this, but when we talk about it being organised and strategic, for a long time people have kind of thought that maybe we were like conspiracy theorists, but there's now mounting evidence that anti-rights network, a recent report by the Human Rights Funders Network found anti-gender or anti-rights movements receive more than 3 times the funding that women's rights and feminist movements do, 3 times. And a recent report from Europe, and this is something that would be really great to do some research on, because I couldn't find any research from our region here, but it was a report that's been done at Europe that showed that between 2019 and 2023, the anti-gender and anti-rights movements were spending $1.18 billion in Europe alone to shift laws, norms, practice, behaviours, etc. And it is paying off for them massively, as you can see in the way that ODA is being reconstructed, conservative governments are on the rise. I noted yesterday that laws changed in the UK have resulted in the Girl Guide movement saying in the UK they will no longer accept trans girls into their movement, saying it would be now illegal under UK law. You see, it's not happening in an accidental way, it's very strategic. And there are certain flags, and once you start to notice that, you'll see it everywhere. And I just wanted to say that this immense resource gap is really allowing those benefiting from that backlash, those conservative groups. They are coordinating, campaigning, and capturing digital and policy spaces with alarming speed, while grassroots girl and youth-led groups fight harder for every dollar to push back. You can see it's like a David and Goliath struggle here. We are not using the tools of technology, we are not talking to the middle, we are doing this grassroots, person by person, while all around us we're using very sophisticated methods. So I just think that's really important to plant here. Not accidental, it's transnational. It copies itself with templates and language that are researched by think tanks and thought through and then tested and populated and pollinated all over the world.
Yeah, go ahead, Michelle. Do you want to tell us a little bit about these dynamics in the Pacific?
Yeah, I just think, like similar. If less than 1% is going globally in the Pacific, it's much lesser, right? And I think that in itself is also the issue, is that you have a really well-resourced anti-rights movement. And some of the most transformative pieces of gender equality legislations, policies in the Pacific have been worked upon for years. And those have been done through, again, resources that are time-bound. You have to spend 60 on programming and 40 on overhead. So there are all these restrictions that actually, I don't think really helps feminist movements, broader civil society, or women's movements to be more agile and be able to respond to the moment, right? Like, so instead of funding and moving resources with as less bureaucracy as possible, we're making it harder already. And so when you have governments who are shifting really rapidly into taking a more conservative stance, and that funding cut occurs, it makes it really hard for already a movement that's barely trying to survive. So you have like yeah, and you're always reacting. And so what you were saying around, there is time to think and pause and rethink of strategies so that you are also building a narrative on how you want to respond. But that's hard. Like, in the Pacific, where you have multiple disasters, and then you have funding cuts, and then you have religion and culture interplay. So it's almost like, don't get me wrong, I'm from the feminist movement. They do massive, just brilliant things, but I just think that we are also not funding or resourcing movements in a way that we want them to win. We are resourcing them in a way that, did you tick this box? Did you provide this form? Which I think is important for transparency and accountability, but it's got to be more than that. Because the way that the world is burning and the ocean is heating up, we gotta be able to think of development, aid, and support in a much more different way than it is right now.
Data about the women politics in Indonesia. How about the alliances between the religious leader and the politics? I already mentioned, but in here I want to give some information about the women politics. Actually, in the general election in the 2024 last year in Indonesia, even we already got the representative in Indonesia House representative in 20% already high, yeah. But the issues there are politic dynasty in Indonesia. Some of the women representative in Indonesia, because in Indonesia for the women to get the representative in the national level and the local, very high cost. So just maybe just women with have the big capital, with have the kinship with the others, a man or woman already to be a governor, to be on the minister, to be in the political party, they will get access more to be a candidate in the political party. So I think this is the new issue in Indonesia, and it's very important for us when we discuss about the woman representative, yeah, because the in Indonesia high cost for women to be a candidate, yeah. Okay.
Thanks very much, Ibu, and a really great reminder of how significant and complex some of the issues around resourcing and resourcing access to power and politics. I'm just wondering, Michelle, do you want to tell us maybe a little bit more, because we've talked a little bit about the relationship between religion and these movements, just where church, kinship and community are intertwined in the Pacific.
Yeah, where do I start?
Small question.
I think I know, in the Pacific, because we've had a history of colonization, right? And because of that, that's really disseminated a lot of indigenous ways of knowing, being and doing, and even indigenous spirituality and indigenous forms of spirituality. And alongside colonization, one of the key things that has occurred is across the region where you have laws that are either inherited or imposed, and religion is one of that, where you've got Christianity when you look across the Pacific, there is a high presence of Christians who self-identify. And what's interesting about kingship in the Pacific is kingship and lineage, it's the way that you make sense of yourself in a world, right? Like, it's the relational way that you position yourself with your family, with your friends, and that gives you purpose. And so the way that you interact because of lineage and kingship is really crucial. And within that also you have, and again, in the Pacific, everybody almost knows someone who's married to someone or who's a cousin. And so when religion comes into play and you have like feminists really trying to push for transformative ways of looking at religion, that's really dealt with very differently. And it really depends also in which country you come from. And what's been really interesting to me this year is really looking at the way the Pacific Islands voting patterns on Palestine self-determination. Like, that in itself really tells you the complex interplay of geopolitics, development incentives, and shifting religious dynamics that's happening in the Pacific. There's a rise of evangelism intertwined with Christian Zionist theology, and that's also really influenced the way that foreign policy decisions are being made in the Pacific, right? The vote on the UN General Assembly, which was looking at protection of civilians and upholding legal and humanitarian obligations in the Gaza crisis, there were 14 Pacific countries and states who voted against it. And it astonishes me. And following that vote, we had 2 Pacific countries, one of which is Fiji, and Papua New Guinea went and opened an embassy in Israel. And it really astounds me when you come from a region where you have high rates of violence, high rates of violence against women, girls, gender non-conforming, people living with disabilities, the resources that the governments, and of course I'm a taxpayer, so I have an opinion of how the taxpayers' money is being used, it's being channeled to open an embassy in Israel, when really, I think, that those resources should be used more internally. And so I think that's a really critical trend to note in how Pacific governments are voting on self-determination, and how that can also have an impact in how Pacific governments look at addressing climate crisis and who should be held accountable for that.
Thanks very much, Michelle. So where we've gone so far with this discussion is that we've looked at, and drawing on the deep knowledge and experience of our amazing panelists, we have looked at some of the different dimensions of what is this very widely experienced challenge in terms of the anti-feminist movement globally, but with local manifestations. And then we've moved on to unpacking a little bit some of the politics that drive this, that resource this, and that also some of these issues that interact with geopolitical issues as well. And Michelle, you've also noted that as, say, for example, a donor like the Australian government needs to be quite mindful of these bigger and broader politics if they're going to engage in this space in a way that isn't contributing or doing harm. So let's turn then to just thinking a little bit then, before we finish, about the sorts of pathways out of this that you see, and the possibilities for, perhaps I won't say transformative change, because I think the situation is possibly a little bit more dire than that, but pathways out, and what in your experience those might be that could help us from holding the line to shifting the system. Where are there areas where women's leadership, men's engagement, or local movements are starting to create real change, not just in policies or representation, but also in the norms that shape behaviour? And I'm going to start with you, Susanne.
So I think Michelle's going to talk about coalitions, because that's certainly a lesson of ours too, but I wanted to talk about systems only shift when hearts and minds do, and that's why changing social norms is at the centre of what we do. And I have seen this happen in communities when men and boys have been invited into the work, not as saviours or adversaries, but as genuine partners. We did some work last year on the Gender Compass. It's a piece of work that segmented the Australian population in relation to their attitudes towards gender equality. And you can download that from our website, but if I were to summarise it, it would identify that there are a group, about 19% of the population, who are trailblazers. They're the people at the forefront of gender equality. They're the ones, many of whom I'm sure are in this room. And at the other end, we named these group the rejectors. They're the people who are part of that. And that's what's interesting about the rejector group. It's about the same size as the trailblazers. It's made up of men and women, and 1 in 5 of that group are under the age of 35. Okay? And then there's the rest in the middle. These are all the movable middle. They're not that tuned into the issues. They're not opposed to the issues. They haven't been engaged on the issues. They haven't formed very strong views about the issues. 2 or 3 insights from that research that we're bringing into the transformation. One of them is, trailblazers, we talk to ourselves constantly and in language that is largely inaccessible to most other people. Highly elitist, very academic, a lot about structural reform. It makes other people feel stupid, and they think it's got nothing to do with them. And so we have to stop talking to ourselves, just to ourselves. Now, actually, in this moment of backlash, this group is feeling very much on the front lines and pretty battered and bruised. So we need to be together. We need to celebrate each other. We need to re-energise each other and spur each other on. But that group of people cannot talk to the rejectors. They antagonise. Everything they say just makes the rejector group backlash more. They just get very antagonised by everything that the trailblazers are saying. It's like red rag to a bull. It's like opposite of. And so the big insight for us is the group in the middle. That's the majority of people. That is who this well-organised transnational group is talking to. They're not talking to us, and they're really not talking to the rejectors. They've already got them in their camp. They're talking to the movable middle. And they're talking to them all the time and in very well-organised comms campaigns. They've chosen the language they use, the frames they use, the influences they use, the platforms they mobilise. And so the other thing we did this year is we created a Moving the Middle communications guide. It's a do not do this, say that, don't say that. And I would say to you, if we are going to really win, we have to stop talking to ourselves. We have to act together in ways that really... So one of the other insights was, if the trailblazers can't talk to the rejectors, we need bridge builders. And the bridge builders in the middle, and many of them are actually men, to be honest, they're the people in the middle. We need the bridge builders who can protect the trailblazers. They could play a protective role, but they also can play this kind of bridging sideways role where they can say to the rejectors, that's not on, you can't do that here. And they're listened to in a different way. They can be neutralised. They probably can't be stopped, but they can be neutralised. So I would be saying, if we are to do something deeply transformative, and my message to us is we really need to get out of our bubbles and think very seriously and with others. And I know that the Minderoo Foundation is thinking about this in their storytelling, in the movies that they're going to be supporting and making. We need to be really tackling that popular culture and that group in the middle in ways that are meaningful to them, which as community development practitioners should not be surprising to us that we would start where they are, except we don't start where they are. We're assuming that they will think like we do, which they don't. And so it's really about taking the approach we use in most of the work we do and applying it to that centre group. That would be my big challenge to us from here.
Thanks very much, Susanne. And Michelle, where do you see these potential pathways?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the, and I talked about where the Pacific is really lacking in leadership, but there's also really great examples of where the Pacific has really led leadership and really it's in the climate change and climate justice arena. And I think, you know, from the 1.5 to stay alive, you know, again, born from the Pacific, from countries such as the Republic of Marshall Islands, the most recent ICJ advisory opinion. I stayed up till 3 o'clock, 4, 5 o'clock that morning, and I just was so proud of how cross movements in the Pacific, from disability, LGBTQI, gender and climate, sorry, got a little bit emotional. Feminist movements. It's just like seeing that culmination of taking the world's biggest problem to the highest court and getting something like that as an advisory led by the Pacific. It's just, it's amazing, right? And I think that kind of leadership, I know that Pacific governments can really do. Now, of course, the fight hasn't ended because the fight has just started. And so really looking forward to again seeing how cross movements support this idea of climate justice. I think when it comes to looking at feminist movements in the Pacific, again, when you look at the family law reforms, to citizenship, to marriage, a lot of those reforms that have occurred across the Pacific, they have been led over time by many, many of the women's organizations. And they've also become a lot more agile and strategic in using UN mechanisms to hold their state governments accountable, as well as the allies of their governments accountable in the way that they support and resource. One of the other things that I'm really proud of is that in a region as diverse as the Pacific, that there has been a birth of 3 women's movements that are in the region. So you have the Women's Fund Fiji, Urgent Action Fund Asia and the Pacific, and the Pacific Feminist Fund, who make up a partnership that brings in 2 other partners, so the Women's Fund Asia and DFAT, who is a partner and a funder in that partnership, which is called Accelerating Investment in Women's Rights. And the reason why I say that that's pivotal in a region where resources rarely come, or if they come, particularly for gender equality, it's in drips and drabs, right? So the presence of women's funds anchored in the region, who come from the region, who understand the issues, And because of that kind of insight, we're able to look at where is the money? Where is the money going? How can we play a role to influence the flow of those resources? So women's funds in the Pacific region is also, for me personally, if I had to look at, that is also a really great achievement of the Pacific feminist movement in its entirety, to be able to give birth to 3 women's funds who really now are able to move resources in a way that's less bureaucratic, that's attentive to the needs, that's also being able to move when context changes and support those interests.
Thank you, Michelle. Ibu Tri, would you like to tell us a little bit about where you see pathways?
I think first we start in the cultural approach, and we have cultural approach and structural approach. For example, in Indonesia, we are the biggest Muslim in the world. So to reinterpret and deconstruction about interpretation of religion is very important. I will start from my organization in Aisyiyah Muhammadiyah. Aisyiyah Muhammadiyah have the Council for Fatwa, and I think this is the first in Indonesia that 35% of Council Fatwa in Muhammadiyah is from member of Aisyiyah. So the interpretation about the verse in Al-Quran and in Al-Hadith more progressive. For example, about the polygamy or monogamy. Muhammadiyah is very clear that the principle of marriage is monogamy. This is a fatwa of Muhammadiyah, and of course Aisyiyah part of Muhammadiyah. And the others about the marriage, marriage in the some some area they have some men marriage not register. So and Muhammadiyah have the fatwa marriage must be registered. So prohibition unmarried register. We should be register our marriage. You should be go to court. This is the very important to protect and women right in the Islam. And the divorce must be performed in court, because in some community, for us, I'll divorce for you, just talk at home. But in Muhammadiyah and Aisyiyah, you should be go to the court to make as you want to divorce. So this is the progressive how we interpret in the Aisyiyah and Muhammadiyah text, and about the child marriage too. In Muhammadiyah and Aisyiyah, if you want to marry, you should be mature just not in the biologies, just in the age, but the economic and the psychology. This is our interpret how about the mature and to protect from the woman and child. This is the very important for us, and then as like I think in Indonesia we have the Kongres Ulama Kongres Perempuan KUPI, Kongres Perempuan Ulama Indonesia. This is important organization to reinterpret about the how about the women in Islam, and Aisyiyah and Muhammadiyah to work about the religious leader, woman religious leader, because religious leader just not a man, but a woman with the progressive, man with the progressive perspective about the religion is very important, and woman ulama, woman ulama. So this is the very important resources in Indonesia to give the perspective. About the issues about the FGM, maybe female genital mutilation, is it clear? And the perspective in Muhammadiyah Aisyiyah, we could not do female genital mutilation because this is the violence. So many cases in Islam we should be clear about it, and in the structural and the I mean, on the approach on the government and the structural, I think we should be implemented upon the gender mainstreaming and give the, I mean, the opportunity for women to participate in I mean, in the development planning forum in many levels. This is, I think, the regulation already have, but we should be support about it. So women could be participate in the forum planning development in many levels, from the villages to the national level, and how we implemented about the regulation that women movement in Indonesia already achieved. For example, about the domestic violence, I mean elimination domestic violence law in Indonesia. Today I think 22 years, but a few women have a bravely to report about the domestic violence, because if they want to report, we don't. I mean, limited service to women to get the right about it, and maybe the woman blame you are not obey with your husband. So why even already 2022 our domestic elimination domestic violence law already enacted by the government, but the implementation still so far to fulfill the women rights for women. Yeah, I think for the government and the I mean the TSO and the norm and social norm is very important, and particularly in Indonesia, because we are the biggest Muslim society, so reinterpret our Islamic values to be very important to support women, because for us, I think for Muhammadiyah and Aisyiyah, religion does not, I mean, should be, could respond or could be respond to answer the problem in the community. Yeah, I think the religion should be bring to the high civilization and to get the well-being for women, well-being for the women and men, for the children. So this is very important for us to make reinterpretation about the social norm, particularly in the religion interpretation. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Shibu Trees. So we've heard a range of different potential pathways there. We've talked a little bit about resources, the strength of the women's movements, the use of different norms and values, including religious values and progressive religious values, communications, how important communications are, and different dimensions of political and political participation and legal reform. So clearly the panel sees various pathways out of this situation. I'm going to turn now to see if there are some questions from the audience for any of our panelists. We have a few minutes. So I'll take a couple of questions. I can see one here. And one more here. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you to panelists for the valuable insights. I'm Pallavi. I'm from Australian High Commission, New Delhi. I have a quick observation and one question. So observation is that while we do projects and programs in India, we keep in mind that gender and disability are not constants, but are constantly evolving concepts. And it is to be played along the intersectionalities of things that are happening in real time, whether it is the social media evolution that is happening. So that's something that we keep in mind, not treating them as constant concepts. My question is on women in politics. So if you're comfortable answering that, do you think that reservation of women in the parliament or in political parties could help in women participation, political participation, or women being more in the decision-making process? So we are not seeing reservation as the end, but a means to an end. So, your opinion on reservation of women.
Can I answer that, and then do you want to answer that?
No, you go first.
Just what I've seen in Australia with quotas in the Labor Party in particular, where they set about pre-selecting 50% of women in all the winnable seats. You've seen over time a massive increase in the number of women who've been elected to Parliament and who now sit inside those serious positions. I definitely do think having more people at the table who can talk about their perspective does change the dynamic and the discussion, but only if they're bringing those intersectional different perspectives to the table. So I think you can easily, but definitely what we've seen, if you see the current government, it's the result of more than 10 years of quotas that pulled women into winnable seats and then into the Parliament and then into the ministries. And you've seen that be very effective. And I just look at the Liberal Party at the moment, which is really struggling with that. They're asking themselves this question, the Conservative Party here, they're asking themselves, how do we appeal to more women? And they are considering that themselves.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, I agree that, yes, having women participation and representation, not just in Parliament, but in political parties, is really crucial to seeing a shift in the way that policies, all of that happens, right? But I think what's missing around that is like really also interrogating the kinds of processes that are in play that either, actually most of them hinder women's participation, and even gender non-conforming and people with disabilities, right? So it's the structures and the processes that themselves are designed really in favor of men. And you can read about it from, all the biographies that I've heard of women leaders talks about that. So I think that's a crucial thing. But I also think that it's about changing attitudes and behavior. Like when I ask my niece or in my family or even friends, would you stand up for Parliament? They don't want to stand up for elections because women's lives are under interrogation, right? Like it's like, what did she wear rather than what did she say? It's who did she talk to or have a glass of wine with instead of what was the purpose? Was she moving something? So women are really put under the microscope in very unfair ways, right? So I think that that's also the other thing. I did also want to share that one of the most exciting things that I've heard about in terms of temporary special measures has come from Solomon Islands, where my co-lead Ruth is from, where they've actually been able to work with a local, a feminist organization, has gone around the provinces in Solomons, and they've endorsed TSM, but that's at the provincial level, and that's amazing for Solomon Islands. So there are potential for shifts to occur.
In Indonesia, I think we mandatory from our regulation. First in Parliament, we support about the affirmative action in Parliament at least 30%, and as well as in political party. Political party mandatory should be put a woman in 30% in when they to be a candidate, and we have regulation about the participatory, so in many level about the participatory in planning development forum and from villages to the national level should be invite for women and marginalized group, include disability, people with disability, and in the regulation of disability law, I think give the opportunity to the people with disability to be candidate in the Parliament, but still I mean to support from us even in the legal on the regulation already available. But I think the technician we should be support to give the opportunity for the disability, marginalized group, vulnerable group, and women at least 30% to participate in the Parliament, in the political party, and the planning development forum.
Thanks, Sibu. We had another question just here, Lena.
Yeah. Hi, Lena Tamang from International IDEA. I was just wondering, what do we know about the sources of funding of the anti-gender anti-rights movement in the region or in Australia, indeed. I think the study you mentioned, Susanne, by the European Parliamentary Forum for Sexual and Reproductive Rights, they discovered that much of the funding comes from two sources, from Russia and from US. And surely there is also homegrown European funding for that too. But wondered, what do we know in the region where the money is coming from?
Someone might know, but in the room, but it'd be a really good piece of research actually to understand the degree to which it's being funded in this area and by whom. But definitely that research said sort of US evangelistic Christian groups and individuals, and yeah, the rest of the money was coming from Russia. It's very important. I think we should be tracking the money because that tells you who's benefiting and for what reason.
Yeah, thanks for the question, because we did have a quick look before and we couldn't find anything else specific to the region. So great piece of research there that's needed. Maybe one or two other questions. One over here. Anyone in this group? Can't see a hand. Okay, one over here.
Hi, my name is Anna from University of PNG. My question is for Michelle. You've mentioned something about along the line. We should find a way to fund a movement in a way that it should move forward. So from your experience, what is one thing in the region, in the Pacific region, that you see that needs to be invested more on right now? And in order to transform that space, we can't solve everything right now, but maybe it's something that is imminent right now that we need to address and maybe fund more. Thank you.
My immediate answer was fund everything that women's rights and feminists say is important. But I hear what you mean around, I think the biggest thing, and it's also a lesson for me since joining and playing a role in being resource justice advocates, right? Like this concept that there is a scarcity of money or scarcity of financial resources in our region. Let's just say Asia and the Pacific. But that the kind of mentality also means that you're always competing with others because your mentality is there's little money, and so I've got to make myself as relevant as possible, understand the language that the different bilaterals or private foundations have, understand the process, fill in my forms so that I look good and sound good, and I can convince someone that my work is valuable, it's sustainable, that if they left tomorrow, we can still fund the work that we have. And I think that really comes from that mentality of, like, again, scarcity, but also the way that development aid is being moved, right? Like, what really irritates me is, right, can you explain to me how your project or program is going to be sustainable? It's going to be sustainable with or without your money, because the work occurred before you came on in the scene, right? Like, women's movements have always operated from resources that they themselves channeled, and then others joined that dream. So I think, that question that you asked around what to fund, I truly believe that we should fund the whole spectrum of work that the movement looks at. And one is because rights are interlinked, they're interrelated. I can't fund the right to food if I'm not looking at the right to life, right? Like, there's a feminist intersectional analysis to why you should fund, not just in thematic, really cute boxes, feel the theory of change. No, it doesn't work that way. And I think the way that is the most transformative way of resourcing the movement is also being a really good listener. Like, listen to what the people are telling you, what your partners are telling you. And then the other one is figure out your role in the ecosystem. So like you said, not everybody can do things, right? Like, you can't. So I think that that's also really crucial. Like, what is your key role in an ecosystem where you want women's rights to flourish? And then figure out how you can then move resources in that way.
Thanks very much, Michelle. Okay, I think just because of the time, I've got one last question for each of the panelists, and it's a very quick question. But we're going to assume that it's 5 years hence, it's now 2030, 5 years have passed. What small change has happened that makes you feel like we might be on the right track? I'll start with you, Susanne.
I've got two.
Okay, two's fine.
There'd be some measurable increase. There'd be a measurable increase in girls' power and decision-making spaces at the local level. And the second one, I think, is a campaign that's launched this week, which I think could be very influential from Teachers' Consent, called Fix Our Feeds, which is really about getting the big tech bros to give us more power and agency over the algorithms that we're receiving. I think that could be absolutely game-changing.
I have a brain fog right now.
Okay. Yes. For me, I think family is to be fundamental. We could make transformation. Yes, I think I imagine that the family with implementing of the gender equality through parenting. I think this is the in Indonesia too, in the new of the planning of development in Indonesia using the resilience of family. I think the family is very important to be intervention for us. So how the family will implementing of the gender equality through the parenting in the every family. And the second, I think, if the women and marginalized group and the vulnerable group already have the opportunity to participate in the forum in the villages to the national level in the planning development forum. Yeah, I think the two.
I think mine, because my work is around resourcing and partnerships, I would really love to see more resources, flexible resources increase, and really also looking at giving. Like I come from a culture of giving. We give because we have abundance, right? There's a culture of sharing that happens in the Pacific. And I think that giving in the Pacific, people give for rugby. Like I wish they would take their money and give it for women's rights, right? Like so, like really encouraging giving, local giving.
So more money to women's movements in rugby.
Well, yes, but you get my. I do. So I think that's one. The other one that I was thinking was it's to do with the ICJ. Like it took 6 years to get this advisory opinion. In the next 5 years, I would love to see some teeth. Some real teeth go into, and I know that that's going to happen, and that would be another moment of just like, joy.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to just thank the panel so much. It's been such a privilege and a pleasure to chair this panel. Yes. And ask the audience to give you another round of applause. Thank you.
Yeah, can we give one more round of applause to that panel, please? And to Nicola for chairing. Thanks very much. So that's going to conclude the formal proceedings of the conference. My colleague from the Asia Foundation, Peter Yates, who's the Australia representative, is just going to say a few words to help us close the conference. Thanks.
Thanks, Cam, and we made it. It feels like a very long time ago that we were privileged enough to hear from Aunty Selina yesterday morning, and she talked a lot about the conception of time, right? Referring to her ancestors walking these lands for 60,000 years. And it's a privilege to get to rock up here in the first week of December every year with our community and make the connections and the contestation and the debate that we've had over these last couple of years. So it's fantastic to be back to have been back for another year. I think having worked in international development since I finished my undergrad study here at the Crawford School back in, 2000 and something, you can sometimes feel like our sector has relevance deprivation syndrome, right? Shrinking global budgets, securitization agenda, chomping at all sides. But when you come and spend 2 days with people not only from the Australian sector, but from people from all over the region who are grappling with this idea of what development actually is, you know actually that you are not irrelevant, that what we work on is meaningful and matters. It matters to people's lives, and while we need to interface with donors and be donors, and while we need to be NGOs and contractors and local leaders in these issues, what we are all working on really matters. And so it's always so refreshing to come here, be updated with the issues that matter most in the year. We've had some incredible panels dealing with the issues that matter most. The politics of backlash just now, some incredible speakers, Eric and Helen last night. I know Dr. Andrew Lee hasn't been speaking about RCTs for 60,000 years, but it sometimes feels like he has, and it's fantastic to hear him still pursuing that agenda on the impact panel yesterday as well. So as we depart from here, actually before I do that, I have a very long list of thank yous because we've been able to meet here in the first week of December thanks to the efforts of so many people, some who've been doing it for a long time and some who haven't, but I want to absolutely acknowledge them by name. So from the DevPol team, I want to recognise Aloha, Estelle, Amita, Finn, Sharon, Isabel, Rubaiyat, Gio, Jazreel, Adelaide, Natasha, Alexandra, Shanice, Masida, Maho, Cecilia, and Cam. Now, I am... I'd also like to thank our conference sponsors as well. So ABC International Development, Aisyiyah, Comonix, Co-Water, DT Global, Palladium, Respond Global, SMEC, and Tetra Tech, and our AV teams who have done an incredible job from Lonsdale Street Studios. Thank you very much for all your work. I don't know if our amazing photographer Alexandra is still here, but if she is, she's captured some incredible pictures. And thank you very much for capturing the moments across the couple of days that we've had as well. It's been much appreciated. I was quite excited that some of you guys might have got your Spotify Wrapped things over the last couple of days. I don't know what age you got told, but I got told I was 73. But even more excitedly, when I opened up the Hoover app just now, the conference app, I got a badge of participation, which I was quite excited about. It does leave me wondering what other badges are available, which I've only got that one, so I'm intrigued to hear. But just to finish up, I absolutely want to recognise Stephen as well, who has been the creator of this conference, and the opportunity for TAF to have partnered with Stephen and his team over the years on this has been an absolute privilege on behalf of the foundation. So we're very, very grateful for that. Yeah, as we all go home to wherever our homes may be, travel safely and like Auntie Selena said, tread lightly on the ground that you walk on. Thank you very much.